Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. I can't imagine taking 3 months out and going to the Himalayas. That would be incredible.
It would be. It would be stunning. And I think all credit to Tejal was the fact of she recognised she needed to take 3 months out.
It's funny, over the over this process of talking to lots of different people, the amount of times that people feel overwhelmed, burnt out, a bit lost. But
lonely.
Yeah,
they feel lonely.
but they don't actually do anything about it. And I think Tejal's a great example of somebody that actually just stepped off that merry-go-round for a short period of time and had a reset. And you're right, loneliness is massive.
It's rare, isn't it? So it's rare for someone to make that decision. And loneliness, bonkers.
Well, is that conversation we had with somebody else about before you're prepared to make change, the pain of where you are has to be greater than the pain of where you're going.
But I suppose it's a bit like, isn't it? And this is going to get all deep and philosophical. It's the frog in the pan.
Oh, in the pan of boiling water.
If you leave it, if you put it in straight away, it jumps out. But if it just boils and boils, it stays there. And I think a lot of life is like that. And I think part of the skill of maybe mastering yourself is to try and understand that. I mean, and all credit to Joe, a young age to think, what, this is not going in a great trajectory.
Working out what you want, as opposed to just staying within a conventional setting.
And if that can help anybody of our any of our listeners, just have a little stand still and think, then it's got to be worth it.
It's really good, really, really valuable episode. I cannot believe we have another guest and another episode for Dentology.
It is amazing. They just keep on coming. They're like, I was going to say buses, but sometimes buses don't keep coming, do they?
No, don't. I'll tell you something that gets me out of this is the desire to learn and get information about the business of dentistry.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact of people, which we are honoured, our listeners, tens of thousands of hours of us, but mainly our guests being listened to. And it's our guests that are the interesting ones. So I'm looking forward to this one.
And I'm not sure if you roll back even 5 years, you would have been able to do a podcast around the business of dentistry and it have the depth of guests we've had on, but also the listeners from the diverse places that we have.
Yeah, true. And the interest. Yeah. The interest from our listeners is continuing, if not growing, which is fascinating.
Absolutely.
So here we go.
So here we are. So today we are very fortunate. We have Dr. Tejal Doshi joining us, and Tejal is an associate dentist and also a fellow podcaster. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, thanks guys. It's brilliant to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Now looking forward to it. I'm interested in having a conversation around your podcast as well, because it's a bit different.
You almost feel there should be some like official podcast fellow podcasters say, may the podcast be with you or something.
Yeah, or like a handshake.
Yeah, that's some sort of weird old sign that we do or something.
Tejal, we always try to start in the same place because people are interested in people. And it's always nice just to get a sense of you, your background, siblings, parents, just to get a sense as to who you are. So perhaps that's a good place to start. What was your childhood like? What do we need to know about your childhood?
Okay, great. I can talk about that. I grew up and was born in northwest London, born and raised, and my parents had emigrated in the 70s and 80s from Kenya and Sudan, but we're ethnically we're Indian. So growing up actually you're growing up confused, if I'm completely honest, because you go to school,
no sense of belonging.
No one really looks like you. Food is different. At home, the language is different. Culture's a little bit different. But then you've got all these really strong African influences as part of our mixed into the Indian culture. So it was great actually. And now I think I'm a real advocate of not having to put yourself in a box or you don't have to slot in anywhere. You are who you are and you take the best bits of everything and it really does make you into the person you are today. So I had a really nice childhood. I think my parents were very much for them, the sort of essence of a stable life was a good education. So I think that was always kind of at the center of everything that they did for me and my sister. In fact, I just saw them graft, work hard, really kind of try and give us the best opportunities that they could. And for that reason, I think you're kind of already as a firstborn internalize the sense of duty of wanting to make their sacrifices worthwhile. So always kind of worked really, really hard, and I found school pretty easy. And my parents probably thought, okay, well, why don't we give her the opportunity to go down the 11 plus route? And honestly speaking, I don't think they had any high expectations, but I did get an opportunity at a really good school in North London. So that came up and they thought, well, are you sure it's going to be really hard? You're actually going to have to do some homework.
What school did you go to, Tejal?
I went to North London Collegiate School in Stanmore. So from 11 plus, I went to a mixed co-ed comprehensive local to where I live, and then I went, so it was a bit of a jump and a transition, but to be honest it was fine, because we just always had a really positive, strong work ethic, and so just crack on with it and just kind of threw ourselves into having, making the most of that opportunity, being part of sports teams and music, and it was very much, it was high achieving, very academic, but it was very much also supportive of all the other things that are important into making somebody an all-rounded individual. But yeah, I was always strong in maths and sciences, so I kind of, as every brown person, thought I'd do medicine. And I was at school careers convention, and there was a massive queue to speak to the doctors because every other brown person was in this, like, thinking the same way. And I was in this really long queue, and there's this lovely lady who sat by herself on this table, and I felt, well, I'm on this queue, I'm waiting here for ages. Let me just go up and say hi to her. So it was this curiosity that I had that led to this one conversation, and she turned out to be a dentist. Who was super positive, really warm, lovely lady, and kind of sparked something in me to be like, oh, dentistry. I never thought about that. Like, we had no dentist in the family, and not really kind of never saw it as a career option, really. It was always just, you're good at sciences, do medicine.
What did your parents do? What were your parents?
My dad's a pharmacist, and he worked for Boots throughout his career. And mum left her job when she had me. So she was a stay-at-home mum. And so, yeah, I guess maybe the science gene came from dad, perhaps. But I mean, they were very much very supportive, and always have been, for me and my sister. So I have a younger sister who's 3 years younger, and it's pretty hilarious. We've basically shared a womb, shared a room, shared like a career trajectory, same school, same uni, same course, and so forth. And we actually work at the same practice. So yeah, she was 3 years junior, and we have a laugh about this. We're like, we share everything, but we just don't share men. That's where we draw the line.
Yeah, well, that's a good plan. Yeah, that's a good idea. Do you ever tease her about it? Not the men, but the fact that she's followed in your footsteps.
No, I don't think there was. She's got a mind of her own, and I think, like, she could have done anything. She always outdid me, if that makes sense. So I think I had no one to I didn't have really an older sibling to kind of benchmark myself, so I just did what I did. But I guess she always kind of pushed herself and applied herself that little bit more, and she'd always like smash everything. So
she
in
can
that
always
sense,
go
I think
one better.
she's probably got more accolades than I do. And but the funny thing was when, sorry,
I said annoying then. An annoying.
No, not at all. Actually, not at all. Everyone thinks actually if you have a sibling or sibling of the same gender, there's this sort of rivalry or this kind of I don't know, healthy competition. But to be fair, we've both kind of always supported each other and kind of done things together. And the funny story is actually when her now husband proposed to her, she got like kind of really kind of anxious, and she said, I think she doesn't remember saying yes, but she got really apprehensive around the whole thing. I was like, is this the first time you're making a big life decision that hasn't been tried and tested by me?
Oh.
And that was the conclusion.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
So we're grateful that you're in dentistry by virtue of there being a long queue to the medicine desk, by the sounds of things. And then you went off to Barts. You qualified at Barts. So were you in the same year as your sister? You studied together at dental school.
We were together for 2 years. We overlapped for 2 years.
Right. Okay.
Party time.
And so, what was your time at Bart's like?
Brilliant.
Was it enjoyable?
Brilliant. Yeah. I loved it. It was quite a small uni. Like the cohort was pretty, so you get to know everybody. You get to know people in the years above and the years below. Really supportive, lovely tutors. In fact, I'm still in touch with some of them to this day. And it was great. I threw myself into uni life. I was kind of part of a bit of a committee freak at the time, just kind of like to sit on committees, do things, organize things. I was still playing netball for a bit. I think I performed as well. So I think I was always programmed that way. I was always wired to be doing all these things. So I remember my diary was always just really busy.
Did you stay at home or did you have rented?
Both. Both. I think I stayed out for about half of the uni. Yeah, about half of the course, and maybe commuted for a couple of years. Yeah.
Right. And then you did your what was VT back then, FD now. You went down to Berkshire to do that.
Yeah.
And what was that practice like?
It was lovely, and I'm still there.
You're still at the same practice?
I'm still at the same practice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
it's a good job you said it was lovely. That would have been awkward.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
It was shocking.
That would have been a really bad reflection of me if I was still there and miserable. But
that's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually.
But no, it was a really good year. Like I think they'd been a training practice for a number of years, so they're super experienced. I had 2 trainers. There was 2 VTs at the time I did it, so we could kind of bounce off each other. Really well supported and just really busy and high needs. So you were kind of just stuck in. There was just so much work to do. But the key thing was the support was brilliant. And I had a really good year. I had no intention at that stage of my career to stay in practice. So for me, it was just like a tick box thing. And it was a bonus that I had a good year.
Brilliant. And it said that a rising tide lifts all boats. So early on in your career or at the beginning, who was kind to you? Who was really helpful to you in the early days of your career?
I think my practice as a whole was a really...
Your trainer?
My trainers, both of them.
Trainers, right.
Yeah, I
suppose, trainers. Trainers come in pairs. Silly. I should have thought about that.
See what you did there.
See what I did?
I like that. Good,
that was a good guy.
There's one called Reebok and one
if
called
anybody
Adidas
didn't hear that listening to this episode, just rewind 10 seconds and you can have it again.
Because it's rare. But it was entertaining. So well done, Andrew.
Give you a moment, just soak it in.
We're going to revel in that.
Yeah. So I had 2 trainers. I had a boss who was very nurturing as well. And I think people were just very supportive at that early stage. You just don't know enough, and you just haven't had enough experience, and it's you're learning a lot. But they were really patient, and I think also I was at a point where I'm always hungry to grow and learn. So I don't take feedback negatively. I always look at it constructively and positively. So I was like, tell me whatever.
It was the way you paused then. I thought this could go both ways. You went, I don't take feedback. You said, I take feedback positively. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, that could have gone all the wrong way. Negatively, you don't really like it. No, brilliant.
And all this is sounding great. But I also know that
in one so young.
Fairly, yes, but fairly early on in your career, you also felt overwhelmed and heading towards burnout. So what you've described so far is this kind of perfect career. You come out of dental school, you've enjoyed it, you've gone to great practice, you've got a couple of great trainers, and it's going well. What was it that kind of put you on that path or led to these feelings? What happened around that time?
Do you know what? I think after that year of VT, I went into hospital doing a really busy max fax job where you're kind of on call, long hours, like really long theatre lists. And we were in a different hospital every week. So you're kind of rotating around like 7-8 hospitals. And it was incredible. Like the experience, the kind of stuff you see is just so... I mean, it's just phenomenal, the kind of work that happens in that environment. And it's stuff that we're really shielded from because it's not as much dental, it's more kind of surgical.
Yeah.
So you're seeing crazy things. And it's, again, it was like a very much a sink or swim kind of role where you are just having to make decisions. You're out of your depth for a lot of the time initially while you're finding your feet, and it's very intense. And so I knew I had to do this if I wanted to specialize, so you kind of just get on with it. But I think it was towards the end of that year where I was like losing steam and momentum. And I think now when I reflect back, it's because I was kind of at it since the age of 10 or 11. So when you're prepping for your 11 plus, then you get into a good school, then you're having to work hard. Like, it was a big commitment from my parents to give us that opportunity. And so we were always working hard, probably when we didn't have to. And then getting good GCSE grades, getting good A-level grades, getting into uni, then getting through 5 years of a tough academic course, and then getting your first job. Like, it was always like you're kind of on this treadmill constantly, not realizing. And then I was like, great. Then I'm thinking of like maybe another 3-4 years of specialization. And I think I was just losing momentum. I just wanted to like get off that treadmill, I think.
It's interesting that you wind back to 10, 11 years old when it started to, that it wasn't kind of the build up of pressure, but that was the start of committing and working hard. And you don't think of the long-term dripping tap effect.
It's intense. I remember my school was probably a bit like yours. From the day you started, it was intense of just making sure you passed exams. And you just get to the point where you're sort of academia out, really. There's too much, and you just say, actually, I've had enough.
And life is so much more than that, isn't it?
Exactly.
There's so many more
So,
dimensions to what's going on. And this kind of culminated in 2022 with you taking a sabbatical.
Yeah, exactly. So I think...
How old were you then, Tejal?
I think I was 31.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, I was about 31. So I think what happened, it was a combination of so many factors, pandemic being one of them, and just life in general. And so I think at that point, I can say this now looking back, there was so much going on, and it wasn't really, I think I'd lost that spark of like, that I had of being a dentist. I love being a dentist. I love like being.
Did other people see this as well, or was it just something that you'd observed of yourself, or was your sister or your parents, people close to you, were they seeing a change in you as well?
Maybe, although they didn't really say anything.
Right. Yeah.
I think it was just a stressful time for everybody over the pandemic and stuff. So you just kind of put it. But I think going back at that time, really, it was just a case of I'd got myself really stuck and lost because I'd never planned to be in general practice. Like, I had a plan to specialize, and I was always somebody with a plan. And at some point that plan changed, which is fine. Plans change and we can take diversions and go down different routes. But I didn't have any clear vision about what I wanted to do with my career, where I wanted to go. So you're kind of just like ticking along week after week, month after month, year after year, and you're just like, don't really know where this boat is going. And it's not a great place to be.
You're almost rudderless by the sounds of things, in the fact of you're sailing, but you don't quite know where you're going to go.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You say it's not a great place to be, but that's for you. I'm sure there's other people who are very bad at making plans and probably don't really have any plans, and they're quite happy for life, be on the wind of life, and it just blows them wherever they go. But that doesn't sound like that suits you. So what did you do when you took your time out? What did you do to help reset?
So I just got away, and I was volunteering as a dentist in the Himalayas for a bit, and that's when I realised.
Hold on! You said that very casually. Yeah. I volunteered as a dentist in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
So take us through that. What was that like?
Yeah, so there's a project called the Himalayan Health Project that I got involved with, and it's in the very, very north of India, in a very kind of remote mountainous region, which is sandwiched between China on the east and Pakistan on the west. So they are. It's still part of India, but it's very different.
Do they routinely have access to dentistry in these areas or not?
It's getting better. But there's a lot of very rural communities that have very little access to any kind of healthcare, to be honest. So we were based in that sort of main city, and they had a clinic there, and so often like we were just basically treating anyone who came in. So it was, they also did some stuff where they'd go out and do camps into the more remote areas, and then bring patients back, because they had a facility where there was Rubber Dam. I don't know if that means anything to you guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they had they were pretty well equipped to do pretty much all aspects of dentistry,
I
aside
still
from
think there's practice in the UK that don't use rubber
That's
dams.
that's a bit weird, isn't it? Like, we're going to go and do a dentistry in the Himalayas where they have got more advanced technology than other places in. Anyway, interesting. Moving on.
Yeah, so that was a great experience, and I think that's when I realized, I was like, you know what, like dentistry is such a privilege. Like it's such, you're in such an amazing position to provide the service, get people out of pain. And the dentistry is the same no matter where you are. Like, humans are humans, so teeth are teeth no matter where you are. And I realized, actually, dentistry is a great career. I really like it. I just need to shuffle things around to make it a bit more aligned to what I want to do and who I am.
Did you take the opportunity to go and sort of utilise the surroundings? So like go out and hike up mountains or whatever?
I wish I had more time there to do that stuff, but my time there was mainly revolving around the clinic. You had the odd half day to do a bit of
so it's quite intense. So you didn't really have much time
off.
off.
So you literally go in the mornings, and you might be there till about 4 or 5 in the evening, and without a real break. And there was no nurse support, so you're just kind of you're doing everything.
You're doing everything,
yeah.
And what do you think your life would have looked like without taking this break? It's almost like a power breaker, isn't it? On an electrical circuit, you have these RCDs, don't you, that stop things overpowering. What would have life looked like if you hadn't taken the break?
Do you know what? Like that gift of time I gave myself, I'm so grateful that I did, and I'm so grateful for the people who enabled me to have that time off. I had 2 bosses at the time, and they were both incredibly supportive.
How long did you take off? Sorry.
3 months.
Oh, right, okay.
So actually, this is not pretty common within the profession, because it's not easy for a business owner to allow somebody that long off. But I think he saw the bigger picture, and I think obviously he's I mean, I came back a new person, a refreshed, re-energized person, and that kind of showed in my in my revenue and so forth. So I think that kind of paid off in itself. But if that hadn't happened, I don't really like to think about it. I don't think I would have left the profession, but I think I knew something had to change. I just didn't know what it was. And so I think giving yourself the time, or taking a step back from that situation, allows you to gain so much more clarity. And I think that clarity is super key to go forwards.
It's really cool, I think, at the age of 31, you were saying, to be able to realise that you did need to do a bit of a reset. A lot of people don't even, 1, identify, or 2, or take the step to do it, because it's quite a ballsy thing, isn't it, to say, actually, guys, I need to switch off for
But also, Tejal, for something like you, who clearly likes a plan, a direction,
definitely,
a purpose, it's quite bold to say, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to step off this treadmill.
Yeah.
I don't really know where it's going to go, what it's going to lead to. I bet it would have been, quite often we were talking to somebody before, and they were saying about to change, the pain of staying the same has to be greater than the pain of stepping off. And I think in your situation, I bet it would have been quite easy to convince yourself just staying on that treadmill and being a bit grumpy.
Hang on in there,
But stepping off. And from your experience, do you think that you're a one-off, or do you think there's a decent number of people within dentistry with similar feelings of feeling overwhelmed and similar feelings of getting towards burnout?
100%. I know I'm not alone, and my story is not unique. I know that. And for me, actually, taking time out did feel like a step backwards, because I'm coming from a long line of women who've not had the privilege of financial independence. So actually kind of letting go of that, I was really insecure, and also really insecure about not having a job to come back to. Hence, I was able to negotiate what I did.
Yeah.
So that was a key thing, actually, for me. And I think that's probably why it probably took me longer to make it happen. I think I had the whispers maybe a year or so before that, but we were stuck in the pandemic, and there was not a lot you could do. So I just kind of kept going. But I think I think actually being able to surrender and let go is so important. I think you have to let go to it, like, to let new experiences and new perspectives and new kind of ideas to come in. If you're if you're holding on really tightly, actually you're not doing you're doing a disservice to yourself.
I love the chimpanzee analogy for that. When they're in the jungle and they're holding on to a vine, and to get to the next vine they have to let go. So they have to let go of one hand to reach the next one. And I think it's a bit like that in life, that if you keep hanging on to it, you just swing backwards and forwards and you don't go anywhere. You've got to let go to have that confidence to grab something else. And that's kind of what you did. We've recently created a new thing called the Principals Club. And it's a new place for independent practice owners to be in a community of like-minded people, access experts and learn more about their business. But one of the drivers for us to creating that was to help combat loneliness, because we think that as an independent practice owner, it's quite lonely. And I know you're not a practice owner, but would you say that loneliness is an issue? Yes, yet. Would you say that loneliness is a thing in dentistry?
Yeah, I think so. I think it can be. I think there's less and less sort of one-man like practices or one surgery practices. It's more, you're generally part of some kind of team, whether it's small or large, but you're in your surgery with your nurse, and you're like, as a dentist, you're literally in the four walls when you're working and seeing patients. And so even my sister and I, when we work at the same practice, we overlap on one day, and on that one day I might catch her at lunch, maybe, if we're lucky, and if it coordinates. So, and I think I've recognized, that I've got my sister, so we've always had each other to kind of talk dentistry with, or whatever. But sometimes if you don't have that support network around you of trusted individuals or people you can really kind of openly be vulnerable and talk about talk about your challenges and stuff, it can be incredibly isolating, because your family or your close ones who maybe not be in the profession, they just won't get it. They just won't get it.
And I guess that either lack of opportunity to talk about it, or the inability or willingness, I guess that's where the pressure starts to build up, doesn't it? If
you internalize it, don't you? You can't release it somewhere.
It just builds up
inside you, isn't it?
Yeah, and you become really resentful, and you just, it's horrible. It's not a nice way to be. And I think there is a lot of I think people feel a lot, if they do open up, and be vulnerable, that they'll be seen as weak. And so it's like sometimes you don't want to do that in front of your friends or your family or your loved ones, or even your colleagues for that matter, because you don't want to be judged. And this is why I think one of the reasons I've recently set up these monthly coffee mornings for a female dentist, literally just holding space for people to or women in the dental profession to just come together and let's just talk. And it's small groups, so you can really kind of keep it intimate, so that you can share.
Are these virtual events, or do you physically get together?
No, face to face.
Nice.
Oh gosh, I'm an in real life girl. I really
a virtual coffee. There you go.
Yeah,
that's really good.
I think the danger is, isn't it, if you don't talk about it. I mean, one of the things I think that's sort of this is where I show my age, is at one time you could have a little bit of a rant about something, but you don't actually want anyone to resolve your rant. You just want to sort of unburden yourself, if that makes sense. But somehow people won't necessarily have a little rant or unburden them, because that is, depending on who it is, you're perceived then, as you were saying, almost a failure and weak. That how can you possibly harbour that view? Have you not sorted it out? But sometimes things are just bloody annoying, aren't they?
And I think there's a phrase, isn't there? People just want you to sit in the mud with them. They just want to sit in the mud and they want to moan, and they don't want you to, like you say, they don't want you to come up with solutions. They just want to go, yeah, it's a bit crap.
Yeah.
And that's enough. And what you were saying about they don't want to talk to colleagues or family or friends, that the shame is they're the very people who would probably have a degree of empathy and would understand the situation. But modern society doesn't make it easy for us to have those conversations.
All that sort of stuff. No.
But I don't know if you know Simon Sinek. Yeah, so he says something about you don't build trust by offering help. you build trust by asking for it. And I think that was really quite profound, and just to encourage people to really, like, actually people want to help, and that's the best. What you're saying is that you know, people actually want to be there for you, and we often feel like we don't want to burden them with our stuff, or you feel like it's just, you know, something you should be able to deal with yourself. But actually people who care about you want to be there for you. And so I think, yeah, we should be encouraging open conversations and dialogue within like communities, within
definitely.
like within the workspace as well. I think it should be really you know, promoting a positive work culture where people do feel that they can just.
I think it's that thing, isn't it? Actually, quite often you're not really asking someone to give you a resolution to something.
Yeah.
You're just really actually trying to be able to articulate something, because by articulating it, you then release it from you, which then sort of almost makes it lose its power, if that makes sense.
But there's obviously a demand for it, because you're arranging your coffee mornings with your colleagues and people are turning up. So there's a thirst for this sort of environment, isn't there, for it to work?
Yeah. It's face to face. And I think there's nothing that, you know, nothing beats that in my world.
Yeah.
But equally, it's just about being around like-minded people who get it. So you're not having to explain, you know, the context of whatever it is. But I think it's not really like a, you know, it's not really a place where you can just rant. It's more about, okay, let's talk about the hurdles and let's see how we can collectively support each other to move forwards as well, and find solutions, and really kind of nudge each other and cheer each other on to go for it. Because often I think people, including myself, have occasionally held themselves back from various opportunities or various at various times, and it really, sometimes you just need that one person to say, go for it, for it, what's the worst that's going to happen? You know?
It makes a difference. Makes a huge difference. And with your sister, you have your own podcast, and it loops back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, doesn't it, about these stories that you bring to life from your heritage. And is this as much for you to learn about your heritage and fill the gaps on that patchwork quilt of life? Tell us about the podcast you do.
Yeah, so the inspiration.
I like that. It was very lyrical, patchwork.
Yeah, it was actually quite poetic. The inspiration came from our grandfather, who passed away last year. So he was basically the personification of resilience.
Right.
And we used to love chatting to him about his journey, his stories, and just his life experiences, because they were so vastly different to anything we could potentially imagine. And he'd just gone through so much, and he'd seen so much, and he just had this sort of very stoic spirit about him. That generation was just a bit different. And when he sort of passed away, and I was just like, well, do you know what? These stories are going to get lost. They're going to get, you know, they're going to disappear with the people as the generations move on. And so I kind of wanted a platform to capture it, but equally for the younger generations to really kind of connect to their heritage, because as the generations progress, things get more diluted. You're more further removed from those times in Africa or in India, in my case. So that was the inspiration behind it. And I honestly didn't feel like anybody would listen, and also actually if anybody would feel comfortable talking about some of these things. So that's where it all sort of began, and we loved that, and that's still one arm of it. And then along the way, we recognized we've met so many inspirational people, a lot of them within the profession, because naturally you are surrounded by lots of dental professionals. And we just felt like there's something we can learn from each other, and from each other's stories, that embody that message of resilience. And so that's where it kind of is going at the moment, where we just want to capture these conversations, because somebody out there might listen to it. You don't know who, and it could change their life.
Yeah, definitely.
When we started this, we're going to be forever grateful to Payam Langurdi, who has the Dental Leaders podcast. And we talked to him very early on, and he said, like, guys, do a podcast. It's really good fun. And he said something that stuck with me, which is find interesting people to talk to and have a conversation. If anybody else decides to listen to that conversation and they take value from it, then that's a bonus. And when we have the conversations we have, we really enjoy chatting to you and all our other guests. If other people enjoy that, that's
a bonus.
That's great.
Yeah, that is a bonus.
Hayward always says that he looks to talk to people that he'd like to have a conversation with, and he does it through the channel of a podcast. If that goes out to the universe and other people join in as well, then it's an uptick. And I love that. And it's similar to what you're saying, that you kind of started from a point of view of kind of trying to capture some of that kind of family history as a result of kind of the stories you heard from your grandfather. And I love that it's kind of moved on and evolved from that.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's such a rewarding thing to do, and I thrive on inspiring, enriching conversations. Like I love that, and so this just allows me to kind of explore that more, and we can share it.
Yeah, that's
use
good.
technology.
You strike me as a very thoughtful person. If you were given the opportunity to go back in time, would you go back and change anything?
No, I don't really think about that, to be honest, because I feel like everything that happens, good, bad, ugly, has shaped me into who I am today. So there is a lesson and a blessing in everything. And I think it was Steve Jobs says you can only join the dots looking backwards. So I've had several experiences where I've had that kind of really inner sort of contentment where, do you know what, Tejal, you're meant to be right here, right now. And that's happened multiple times. So then you kind of just have to trust the process, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we just got to do the best we can for where we are.
Yeah.
Kind of at that time. And as a throwaway, when I said about not being a practice owner, you said yet. So is practice ownership in your future plans?
I say never. If you'd asked me about 5 years ago, I said hell no. That sort of has kind of opinion has kind of evolved a little bit. I think my sister and I have always been fed the idea of two sisters, siblings, same profession, both in just buy a business, like go into business, buy a practice, and neither of us inherently wanted it, or we didn't go into the profession with the mind of being a business owner. But I don't know. I think sometimes I have been thinking about it a bit more. So we'll see.
It feels like a hankering.
It does.
There's like a little hankering in there.
It does. And I think I'd say to people in your situation, if it's something you want to explore and develop, absolutely 100% go for it. But also, we shouldn't have a hierarchy in dentistry that says you go to dental school, you do FD, you're an associate, you buy a practice. Because some people are ill-equipped to be practice owners. Only a business as well as being a clinician is quite a big ask, and I don't like a culture or structure that makes people believe that is the natural step. For people who want to do it, honestly, Chris and I, we own a number of businesses. Owning a business is a hoot. It really is. It's the best thing. But I also know it's not for everybody. And
at times it's not the best thing.
No, there are periods where it's frightful and dreadful and stressful and all that good stuff. So it's not all champagne parties and chocolates. But equally, in terms of leading a team, setting the culture, setting the direction, that sort of stuff, it's very rewarding indeed.
Hoo-ah.
Yeah. We've got to a stage where we've got a couple of really important questions to ask you.
Yeah, killer questions.
So the first question we have to ask you is, if you were a fly on the wall, where would you be and who would be there?
If I was a fly on the wall, I would be in India probably about 100 years ago in the 1920s, 1930s, when my great-grandfather, so my maternal grandmother's father, was making the decision to leave India to go to Sudan, an alien country with an alien language, culture, at a time when they didn't have information like we do accessible and now. And what was going through his mind, what were the conversations he was having before he took this.
It's an interesting choice, isn't it, to go to Sudan? It's not like you're top of your list of Where should we go to? Oh, Sudan. That sounds like fun. It's just like a bit weird, really. I'm sorry, I don't mean rudely, but it's an unusual thought process, isn't it, as to what triggered him to think that was a good place to go
I'd
to.
love to.
And no one
understand.
knows. No one knows, I suppose.
I mean, no. I mean, there was obviously opportunity there from a I guess a business perspective, which is probably what was the impetus. But I would love to know the more kind of the conversation, thought process, where the courage, to take that leap of faith,
definitely.
all of that.
And that also, I guess, sparked within your family a bit of a nomadic existence for a while, where the family they kind of moved around to different countries over different generations as well.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, if they hadn't made those decisions, I guess ultimately, I wouldn't be sitting here, right?
No, absolutely. And if you were given the opportunity to sit down with somebody and have a conversation, who would you like that person to be?
Trevor Noah.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, I just the way his brain works fascinates me. So I listen to his podcast quite a bit, and I'd love to have a coffee with him. And in fact, actually, I'd really love for his mother to be on my podcast.
Reach out. You heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. I'm putting out into the universe.
Brilliant.
You never know.
Tejal, it's been a joy. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
it's been
thank you.
Really, really enjoyable. One thing you could do for us, could you let us have a link to your podcast, and we'll drop that in the guest notes, because whilst it's quite a personal one, I'm sure there's lots of people that will be interested in that heritage and I think it's back to this thing about just being interested in people and stories and lives.
I think that's what it's evolved to, and I think a lot of the last few guests have all been sort of dentists who are doing some amazing things outside the profession. So we can all derive inspiration from it. So absolutely, I will.
Yeah, so get that link dropped in and we'll do that.
Brilliant.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Have a lovely evening and rest of the weekend.
Look after yourself. Cheers, Tejal. Ta-da.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.